Angela here, faith deconstruction coach. I've got a hard question for you. We're having some conversations over in the Deconstruction Cafe, Faith Deconstruction Cafe, which is my free Facebook group. We're doing a workshop over there, blah, blah, blah. But we're talking about survival mode, and we're talking about self care and self love and all those different things. And I wanted to bring a little bit of the conversation over here because I think one of the hardest things to recognize is that a lot of what we're putting up with, a lot of what we're experiencing in these toxic religious communities, we're we're holding on to it because we're afraid of rejection. So I just want to ask you today, what are you holding on to because you're afraid of rejection, because you're afraid of isolation? What are you putting up with? And specifically in the space of religion, in faith deconstruction, we gotta dump it all out. We gotta hold it in our hand and sift and sort and ask what the heck we believe anymore and what we think Christian community should be like and just how we want to proceed with this whole thing, right? And part of that discussion needs to be around what we're tolerating. And is it something that's actually moving us towards flourishing, right? The whole point of faith, the whole point of being in a faith based community is to move towards spiritual flourishing. Now, a lot of us have been taught that the whole point of a faith community is to sacrifice ourselves on the altar of doing more and being more and allowing ourselves to be exploited. But that's not actually what those spaces are supposed to be for. That's what some of them have become. What I want to talk about today, and what the question that I really want you to chew on, because it's not easy. It's not an easy question, and it's not going to be a comfortable question, is what are you tolerating that is actually harming you, that is actually moving you away from spiritual flourishing? And why are you still tolerating it? And I think that the biggest answer comes down to this fear that we have about rejection. And I don't want you to think that this is like poo-pooing that fear of rejection, because it's a valid thing. It's an absolutely valid thing because we are wired for connection, but we're also conditioned by the relationships that we've been in to value connection and to value that relationship and to trust the other people in that relationship more than we trust ourselves. So when we bump up against things and it feels hard and scary because we're afraid that if we get too far out of the box or if we color out of the lines too far, that we're going to end up being booted out of the community. We're going to end up being rejected. And even, the hardest thing about faith circles is not only are we being rejected by people here, but we're told that those people speak for God. And so if the people here kick us out of the community, there's this additional heaviness of they're being righteous, we're being sinners, and we're getting kicked out of the community because that's what God would want. That's ugly. That's harsh, right? We see this a lot with people who are in some of the most marginalized groups. And they're marginalized by society. It's not like they were born in a way that God says, hey, that person is lesser. That's just not a thing. But what happens is we have this hierarchy in our community where people get pushed to the edges. People who don't fit that traditional, air quotes, traditional mold and don't serve the powers that be, right? There's always, if you're at the top of the hierarchy, you got to make sure that there's always people at the bottom, because that's what makes you different and that's what gives you more power, right? So the more that we tolerate these communities that are just sucking the life out of us, the more we stay in the faith community and just go without the things that we need, the more we're actually upholding that system that's harming Indigenous and people of color and queer people and trans women and just all kinds of people. Even though we think we're not harming them, if we're staying in that system and we're lending our power to that system, then we absolutely are harming them. And we're harming ourselves because our needs are going unmet. And I think that there's this really just toxic, really unhealthy idea that self-sacrifice and depriving ourselves of basic things like healthy relationships and equitable communities and um, affection and autonomy and valuing ourselves, all those things. We're taught that not having those things, like giving those things up, actually benefits us and somehow makes us more holy. And I think that we just need to be really honest and call bullshit on that, because I don't know how self harm can be holy. I don't know how. I just, I've never read a Bible passage that says that. I've never had a conversation with my creator that says that. Instead, what I hear is that we should be cherishing ourselves, which means cherishing ourselves means not putting up with shitty relationships. Because if we're just saying, we're just tolerating these half hearted relationships because they feel safer than no relationship at all, how are we honoring anything? We're not honoring ourselves. We're not honoring the potential that we have within us. We're not even honoring who created us. We're just not honoring any of that, because we're setting the bar so low that we're saying our self-worth is way down here, and what we've got, even though it's not great, what we've got is actually what we deserve. So we treat ourselves at this level instead of treating ourselves as the whole creations that we are, as the complex, beautiful creations that we are. And so I would just really challenge you, if you're engaged in a relationship, whether it's dating or marriage, if you are engaged in a community, maybe it's a business community somewhere you work, or clubs or churches or whatever, ask yourself if your needs are actually getting met most of the time. Are you getting the support and the connection? Or is it a space where you have to prove yourself? Is it a space where you have to constantly hustle and constantly pour out to get any type of recognition? Because in a healthy community, faith-based community or not, in a healthy community, there should be an equitable balance of both power and investment. So if you're making way more investment than what you're getting out, most of the time, that's an unhealthy situation. Now, I would say the exception to that is if you're caring for someone who is unable to care for themselves. Those relationships, those do require more sacrifice, but that doesn't mean that it's a person, that doesn't mean that that level of sacrifice is what you need to do to deserve all of your relationships. So if you're dealing with a relatively healthy and stable adult, or a child who's a little bit older, there should be some equity there. There should be an equitable relationship. So it shouldn't be you doing all the heavy lifting all the time and the other person getting the benefit of your heavy lifting, right? So we want to balance those things back out. And the first thing you have to do is decide that you're actually worth healthy relationships. And that's challenging, because a lot of us have a really hard time looking in the mirror and saying, yeah, I actually deserve better. I deserve better than this relationship that primarily benefits the other person. And the only thing that I'm getting out of it is some basic survival level connection. We have to get away from that. And it invites us to choose. It invites us to explore what life might look like if we had more supportive relationships. And so in your faith community, when you're talking about deconstruction, whether you're still in that old faith community or you've got one foot in and one foot out, I'm going to challenge you to get really curious about why you're lingering. Sometimes there are very, very valid reasons to linger. So don't automatically say, oh yeah, I've got one foot in and one foot out. I need to get off the fence. I've got one foot in and one foot out for healthy reasons, because I love my faith community. I don't love some of what they stand for, but I actually love that community. And I think it's a very supportive community. Now, am I as active and head over heels there all the time? No, because there are some needs that they can't meet. And so prioritizing that balance, prioritizing getting what you need in the relationship is going to be really important. And also taking a look at whether or not it's a space, it's your old faith community. Is it a space where they're hyping up your anxiety and they're constantly putting more and more and more pressure on you to perform, and then throwing the weight of God behind that and saying that if you don't do X, Y, Z, God's going to be mad at you. You're going to be letting God down. You're going to be separated from God. Like how are they motivating you? Are they motivating you through fear tactics, Are they motivating you through these threats of being isolated, or these threats of if you make the wrong decision, you're going to lead your family and your friends and everybody down the wrong path? Because if that's what they're motivating you with, then it's probably not the healthiest space. It just isn't. Sorry, it's spring and there's a gnat flying around. Yeah, it's just not the healthiest space for you. So, this is an invitation to take a step back and just ask yourself, what am I tolerating? And why am I tolerating it? Am I tolerating that because I'm getting a whole lot in other spaces? Or am I tolerating that because I'm afraid that there's not any better out there? And sit with that and explore that. And if you're still in a space where prayer time is beneficial, take it into your prayer time. If prayer is not something that works for you anymore, take it into a meditation time and literally just sit with the idea of, what am I tolerating? What am I putting up with that isn't actually serving me? And then you can have an honest discussion with yourself about why you're doing that and if you want to keep doing it. Do you keep want to throwing that much investment into a relationship that's not benefiting you, that's not moving you towards flourishing and moving you towards a thriving spiritual life, whatever that looks like for you? If you need help with that, a lot of these things, therapy, coaching, getting in the group coaching program that's open right now, a lot of these things are going to require some additional support. And the best thing that you can do is create a space for yourself that's not in that unhealthy environment, because it's going to help you get perspective. So whether it's getting a therapist or hiring me as your coach or joining one of the group coaching programs that's open right now, you've got to get some space for yourself that's outside of that community so that you can really get a sense for why you're there and what's going on and what it's like to be outside the community, because it can be hard. But I have to tell you, most people who come out of those unhealthy spaces are like, why did I wait so long? Why did I wait so long? Because it's hard and it takes more energy than what you realize. Okay? So that's your homework. That's what I want you to chew on. What are you tolerating, and do you want to keep doing it? If you want to have additional support on this, make sure you're a member of the cafe. I'll drop the link in a comment below, but we're doing a ton of good work. April's my birthday month, and so we're giving away lots and lots of free training, and there's a workshop going on over there right now. Also have a free one next week on parenting while deconstructing, and then another free one on Thursday night about learning how to trust yourself more during deconstruction. So hop in those, let me know what you're thinking, and let me know what your thoughts are about tolerating. What are you putting up with that maybe you just don't want to put up with anymore? See you soon.